Good evening, everybody. Good windy evening. I don't know, local folks, if you're hearing what I'm hearing, but my goodness, the wind has definitely kicked up tonight, which they said it was going to. Um, I'm glad we're all safe indoors. I've got a nice warm beverage to kick back with you this evening. In fact, I wanted to show you what I've got tonight. Cranberry Vanilla Wonderland Celestial Seasonings blend that was given to me as a gift, and it is fantastic. It's herbal and it's caffeine free, so um, I won't have any trouble falling asleep tonight. Hopefully I stay awake for the next hour. Got some other things to share with you this evening too. Let's start with this. Oh, I was afraid that was kind of. I wanted to show you the extreme orange color of this wood, but the lighting we have here at Casa Otto isn't conducive to that. Let me see if I change the angle, if that's going to make a difference. I wanted to show you how orange, well, you can kind of, let's see if I change it. Push it down here. No. I wanted to show you how you can identify buckthorn by the color of the wood. I guess we're just going to have to meet up in person sometime. This was a chip from some of the activity that's been going on over at Fabian Forest Preserve. Over on the east side, they've been going through there with a lot of major equipment, brush mowers and things like that, getting rid of buckthorn. I think that was the primary offender over there. They might have some honeysuckle as well. I know there's some members of the public who were kind of up in arms because the forest preserve was cutting down the forest. But of course, as we all know, it's not so much the forest, it's not the oak trees. The work that's going on over there is geared towards removing these invasive species. So we can clear out that understory, let the sunlight come through and help with oak regeneration. Those little acorns that are down on the woodland floor, they need sunlight in order to be able to grow. And when there's a tangle, a thicket of invasive brush that sunlight can't penetrate, and those oak seeds cannot germinate. Tech support puppies come in for a visit. Come up here, buddy. The other thing that will help with is the woodland wildflowers. They also suffer when there's a thick layer of shade producing buckthorn and honeysuckle. These plants that have been introduced, they also change the soil chemistry. So getting rid of them and encouraging the growth of native plants is what it's all about. So anyway, yeah, I'll have to figure out a way to show you this sometime because it is really cool. It's really orange in real life. All right, you come up here? You gonna move? All right, we're gonna make this difficult. So, I apologize for getting the Zoom invite out a little bit later than usual. As I mentioned briefly in the email, there's Poker. Why don't you get down, buddy? I was reading a bulletin that was published by the Natural History Survey, Illinois Natural History Survey, in I believe it was 1953. And I'm going to see if I can do a screen share just so you can get a look at it. And if you'd like for me to send it to you, it's not real long. It says it's something like 25 or 30 pages, but there's a lot of pictures and graphs and things like that. I'm going to see if I can pull it up here as a screen share. All right. It's taking its time opening. All right, let's share the screen. I'm going to share. All right, here we go. So doesn't look too exciting on the cover. But if we scroll down through, white-tailed deer populations in Illinois, 1954 is when it was dated. But, you know, we tend to look at deer as a ubiquitous part of our landscape. I know there's talk, in fact, a lot of forest preserve districts around here are culling deer. They're going out and selectively taking out members of the population to try and keep the numbers down, keep the there's a couple different motives behind it. One is to keep the numbers down so disease doesn't spread as rapidly, and two, to keep us safe. There's a lot of people that hit deer with cars, and that's certainly not a pleasant thing to have to go through. But you know, there was a time when Illinois was pretty much out of deer. For much of the earlier part of the last century, there weren't many deer around, and there really wasn't any deer hunting either. This bulletin kind of walks us through the history, the earlier history, calling on records, written records, people's recollections. In fact, there was one interview with a woman who was in her 90s in the 1940s or 50s, and she was calling upon her recollections as a young girl of people who kept deer in pens. That was pretty interesting. But the thinking is that the populations of deer that we have here in northern Illinois were really based on a couple of different captive populations that were either released on purpose or escaped. One group was released after a tornado came through and blew down all the fencing. But I thought this was kind of cool here. Figure 3 is a reproduction of an old photograph, now faded, of a doe, Fanny, and a buck, Sam, probably in the late 1890s. They were believed to have provided the nucleus for a herd that contributed to the repopulation of the Rock River Deer Range in northern Illinois. So there were a couple different population centers for deer as they started to make a comeback. West of Rockford, and in that general Rock River watershed was one area, and then there was another group down in southern Illinois. As these populations continued to grow, especially the southern Illinois ones, the conservation, the Department of Conservation, as it was called at the time, would move deer from those population centers and deposit them in other parts of the state. And if we scroll down some more, it shows how they were capturing and moving the deer around. Yeah, these maps here, these were pretty cool. Let's see, this lower map here, zoom in, that lower left map, the number of deer represented in numerals in Illinois counties in the winter of 1950 to 51. Look at DuPage. And now this was mostly these census were taken. There were some aerial flyovers that were done, but then there was also some counting on the ground. It was thought that some of those deer out, you can see out there around Winnebago County and west over here, some of these numbers are pretty high, and I believe some of those were thought to be a little overinflated because they were based on an extrapolation that might have been a little bit generous. But 16 deer in Kane County, 0 in Kendall. I mean, this was within what I would consider to be fairly recent memory, the 1950s. So needless to say, they have staged a tremendous comeback. The reason we ran out of deer, so the earlier part of this bulletin talks about how as Illinois started to welcome settlers, the deer, we didn't have a ton of deer. We didn't have a lack of deer. We certainly had less though then than we do now. But as people started to clear woodlands and build their houses and start planting their crops, that created more edge habitat, and that's what deer really thrive in. Kind of some of the conditions we have today, only on a much smaller scale back then, but they were creating edge habitat, which caused the deer population to increase. But then as our human population increased more and more, that edge habitat, even that was felled, and cities were built, and the habitat became unsuitable for deer. And there was a lot of hunting to protect crops. There were parts of the deer that were more valued than others, so there was some kind of wasteful use of the deer that went on. There's a high value placed on venison ham, but less value placed on the rest of the venison, the rest of the deer meat. So between the hunting and the loss of habitat, the numbers dropped down until, as we went into the turn of the last century, we had barely any deer. So just kind of neat. If any of you would like to read this, it is a PDF. I'd be glad to email it to you. You just let me know. Maybe shoot me an email afterwards, and I'd be glad to send it up to you. Let's see, from there, since we're doing a screen share, I'm going to see if I can continue this good luck and bring up another couple of things here. So I think we've talked in the past about kestrels in Kane County, and how there's a program, a kestrel box program that's going on to try and encourage this cavity nesting raptor to improve its numbers here in our area. So this is one of those boxes. This is built by a gentleman named John. He's a member of Kane County Audubon. He lives in the southern part of the county, and he builds these boxes. Let's watch this again. Now, kestrels are a species where the male, he finds what he feels are suitable, possibly potential, nesting sites, and he kind of scopes them out, and that's what we're seeing here. You can see down here below, it says this is camera. This is a game camera. This was January 25th, right at noon, and here he goes. Just kind of checking out the craftsmanship, maybe the interior dimensions, seeing just what this box, the potential of this box might be. Now, if I go on, let's go to this next one here. So here, what do we have going on? But we have, the way. Oh, there's two kestrels. So there's some hope that maybe he's checking things out, and then she's checking things out. Maybe this box will have kestrel occupancy this year. This is a bird. Cavities they're in high demand. Certain birds can make them, like woodpeckers. Chickadees can excavate small cavities, but there's a lot of birds that rely on cavities for nesting, yet they have no ability to create them themselves. This amongst the smaller songbirds, we've got species like nuthatches, the white-breasted nuthatch. We've got songbirds like eastern bluebirds and tree swallows. These are birds that need to nest inside. They'll nest in boxes as well as natural cavities, but they don't have the adaptations. They don't have the strong bill or the strong neck. They're not able to build their own. There's also because these cavities are in demand, there's also quite a bit of competition for them. And a big player in that arena is the European starling. Starlings are one of the biggest competitors with kestrels of nesting sites. And there's been some of the nest box monitoring that's going on has been finding that rather than kestrels moving in, they're seeing starlings moving in. And of course, that's not the intent. So having this volunteer program, which is something, if you're in the area and you're looking to participate more in community science, this is a program that I know King County would welcome more volunteers. And so that was just kind of a cool update. And I'll stay in touch with John if it ends up that the kestrels decide to move in and choose this as a nest site. We'll keep you posted on that throughout the year if it happens. Let's keep our fingers crossed. All right, from here, let's see. How do I get rid of this? Let's go here. Let's go to some slides from today. Now, this is not a new slide. This is an old slide. Sarah, I don't know if you're on tonight, but this reminded us of this when we were on our nerd walk this past week. So this, what we're looking at here, this was a photo that was from November of, I believe, 2021. So a little over a year ago. And this is down at the Batavia Wildflower Sanctuary, where the river walks around that little peninsula there in downtown Batavia. And there's a group of dedicated volunteers that maintains the Wildflower Sanctuary. They act as stewards there. Well, the volunteers noticed that something was chewing on this tree, which happens to be an Ohio buckeye. And after a little bit of spying, it was determined that it was this character, or maybe he and his kind, or she and her kind. I'm not sure if it's a male or a female that we're looking at there, but it's a fox squirrel. And the pith of the Ohio buckeye is attractive to these creatures, especially when their other food sources maybe aren't as plentiful as they are to be, or in any case, it's only been written about a time or two. But what these squirrels do is they chew off the twigs and they eat the sweet pith, which is the soft, the innermost layer of those twigs. And it ended up making in fact, the tree looked pretty butchered at the end of the season because of the way the squirrel was chewing all those twigs off. Well, we weren't sure if the tree was going to make it, but it's a little worse for wear. But here it is. You can see all these funky right angles on the branches where the squirrel chewed off the twigs. But they did come back. Just in a slightly altered form. Now, oh, you know what? This is a different tree. This is the only one. So this, let me zoom in here. So, these areas here where the branches look like they're missing, that's where the squirrel chewed them off, and then the tree sent out new growth. Now this is, if you're familiar with the what would we call that, a memory key, a mnemonic device. It's a saying mad horse buck. And it's a way of remembering the species in this area, the tree species that have an opposite growth habit for their branches. So see how these branches here are exactly opposite? Well, this is the buck in that saying. So MAD stands for maple, ash, and dogwood. Horse would be horse chestnut, and buck would be buckeye. So here's the opposite branches coming back after that squirrel chomped them off. So I thought that was kind of cool, kind of a nice little update. The tree did survive, even though it didn't look too happy in the fall of 2021. still hanging in there. That's the River Rain Apartments. So yeah, I was looking at, like, what in the world kind of fruit? Those aren't horse chestnuts or buckeyes. So this is a blue ash, and I tried to. This is actually, so or ash. This is another tree with an opposite growth habit. See how these branches are growing opposite each other. Blue ash. So we've got a few ashes in this area. The ones that didn't get destroyed by the emerald ash borer. There's a few that are still hanging there, and the blue ash actually seemed to fare pretty well. I don't know if the beetles avoided it or if there was just the way the beetle population fell. If they're, I don't know, but we seem to still have some blue ash that have survived. Blue ash is distinguished by its square stems, and you can kind of see it here. See how there's kind of these wings here on the sides, and it makes a square character to these twigs. And if we go over here and zoom in even more, I'm gonna make this happen or not. You can see the Fraxinus, that's the genus name for ash, and then the quad part of the species name is a reminder that this grows in quads or fours or squares. So kind of a cool thing. This one is tagged, but there are other areas where you can see blue ash that are not tagged. I know there's a few down at Glenwood Forest Preserve, which is south of downtown Batavia on the east side of the river. And there's also a pretty good standout at Johnson's Mound. There's a lot of small, young blue ash that are growing alongside the access road there that goes up the mound over at Johnson's Mound Forest Preserve in, is it Elburn? So moving right along. Yep, this should have been 2 slides back. This is the really cool bud on the horse chestnut. But this is the time of year. My goodness, we're having some technical problems. Ironically, tech support puppy is now sound asleep next to me, so he's of no help at all. So this was another little bit of Fox River drama that occurred last Friday as we were walking along the river. This picture was taken by a local wildlife photographer named Gordon, and he's got the giant lens so he can take all kinds of cool pictures. He's one of the a handful of photographers that track the bald eagles along the Fox River. Well, he was out shooting last Friday, and he showed me this picture of a goose that's got, so aggravating, it's got fishing line wrapped around its leg. And you can see so the goose was limping, and you can see how swollen it is. The fishing line was cutting off the blood supply, which can the fishing line itself can cut into the skin, and that can become infected. The loss of circulation can cause other problems. And then this is a banded bird, so I'm sure that was causing pressure on the foot as well. Well, Gordon had mentioned it to our little group of walking nerds, so we looked for it. He said that he saw it down by the Batavia Riverwalk, so in that area that we were headed towards, where we just saw the buckeye tree and the blue ash. So while we were down there, we looked, and it turns out a lot of geese look like they're limping when they walk, but we didn't see this specific one. But the good news is that evening, so this was last Friday, Gordon emailed me that night. He had contacted a group we'd mentioned a few weeks ago, the Chicago Bird Collision Monitors. And these folks, it's a wide network of volunteers. They actually started, they formed to collect the songbirds that crash into buildings in downtown Chicago. That's the name, collision monitors. But they've expanded, and they will rescue birds as they're able, and get them to various wildlife rehab facilities. So this bird was captured and was treated. The line was cut off, and it sounds like the bird's going to be okay. Now, again, the walking group, the nerds that I was walking with, we didn't see this particular bird, but we did see these. This is in a different spot on the Fox River. This is as we're heading back north from downtown Batavia back towards the Fabian Forest Preserve. And we saw this pair, and the bird, I believe it's the bird on the left in this group, had a pretty good limp. Now, I took this picture for a couple of reasons. One was to see if I could try and zoom in. Now, I don't have the fancy lens that Gordon does, so we couldn't really see what was going on, other than that this bird had a band too, and that's the foot it was limping on. But this was just a little reminder to me, so that I could remember to tell you that this is another sign of spring. When we start to see birds that flock together like geese, when we start to see them pairing off. Now, there were other geese not too far from these guys, so this is early on in the process. But when they start to move off like this on their own, this is the pair. They're reaffirming their pair bonds, and this is really the first step in their courtship as they move towards the mating season. So it's a sign of spring. The way the wind is blowing, I know it's not super cold out yet, but I know that I think Thursday we're supposed to get some snow. So it doesn't mean winter is over, but it does mean that these birds are noticing that the days, every day they're getting 2 minutes more of daytime, daylight, and we're inching ever closer to the time when they'll be building their nests and raising their young. So pretty cool. Let's zoom back out of this. And yeah, so I don't know, in looking at the geese around town, there's a lot of it's not easy being a suburban goose. Besides fishing line and fish hooks, there's other types of trash that can be harmful. They can get plastic rings and things like that stuck around their feet or around their necks, and some of them suffer from a diet. I believe it's caused by a dietary imbalance. It's a condition called angel wing, where their wings, they can't fly anymore. Their wings get all kind of tattered looking, and they twist out to the sides. But we definitely still have a large population, even though they might not all be 100% healthy and uninjured. So I got this new phone last week, and I'm still getting used to it. Apparently I have a lot to, it's supposed to have a really good camera, but I have not quite gotten the hang of it, especially trying to take pictures in bright sunlight. I just could not see what I was doing. And this was actually the best of the pictures that I took that day. So this was last Saturday. This is over at Fearson Creek Fen, which is just north of downtown St. Charles. And I wanted to check on a few things there. This is the pussy willow tree that grows there. This is a native pussy willow. It's a species that is important to our native pollinators because it blooms early, and it puts out a healthy pollen that our bumblebees and some of our other native bees find valuable, extremely valuable to their life cycles, because they're coming up out of the ground usually just after the frost starts to break out. So pussy willow isn't quite fluffed out yet, but it's getting there. You can see those buds are getting ready to open up. Won't be too much longer. and that'll be nicely fluffed out. Those, by the way, are the male flowers on the tree. This is the actual purpose that I went to Fraxinus Creek for. This has been a traditional spot to go and look for skunk cabbage. And I thought with the warm temperatures, the rains that we've been having, I was really thinking that the skunk cabbage would be a little farther along than it is. I was looking back at some of the records that we have in the naturalist department at the Park District, and we was a year when the skunk cabbage was blooming on February 15th. Of course, I don't remember which year that was, but I thought for sure we'd see things a little bit farther along. But I tromped around in a lot of different places at the Fen, and I didn't see any that were any farther along than this. We zoom in here. Here's what we're talking about. This is the skunk cabbage. Actually, it looked pretty similar to what we saw last fall when we were looking. I had gone there to see if I could find some skunk cabbage fruit that would have skunk cabbage seeds on it, and I got skunked. But somebody said they thought that there might be a skunk cabbage in bloom down at Glenwood, that forest preserve just south of Batavia. So might have to get over there and check that out. Now, Gordon, the gentleman who took the picture of the goose with the fishing line around, he said that he's always found the Fraxinus Creek Fen skunk cabbage to be a little bit behind some of the other places where he goes to photograph this flower. So maybe there is some skunk cabbage in bloom in other places, but it's not up at the Fen yet. But I was kind of surprised. So this is a picture from last fall. This is an enormous crayfish chimney that's not too far from where the skunk cabbage is at Fraxinus Creek Fen. I wrote a little article about this particular mound last fall, in a weird sort of twist. I didn't have my usual lip balm with me, so I was using a quarter to show the size of this thing. And I accidentally dropped a quarter down the hole. So there's a crayfish at the Fen that's 25 cents richer than all the other crayfish there. Well, I was really surprised to see that this mound looks pretty much the same. Nothing has knocked it over. No animals tried to dig it up. It's still really big. And has survived our winter quite well, because we haven't really had a horrible winter. And I guess I was thinking that maybe crayfish chimneys had a sort of a limited lifespan. They're not really built to be structurally sound. It's just the crayfish this is the byproduct of a crayfish digging a burrow. But yeah, apparently they have some staying power, because that giant chimney is where I remembered seeing it. Now, this, I don't want to spend too much time on this because it's not local wildlife, but it was a really happy surprise to see when I was at Hickory Knolls last week for the Audubon meeting. This is sweetie corn. She's one of several corn snakes that we use to teach with at the Nature Center when we do our outreach programs. She is actually the only corn snake we have that has a pattern similar to what would be seen in the wild. She's known as an Okiti corn. And if you were to travel to the southeastern United States, say South Carolina or Georgia, Florida, you might, if you were lucky enough to find a corn snake in the wild, you might actually look like little sweetie here. The colors are just outstanding on this snake. There's some debate as to how corn snakes got their name. In one line of thought, the name stems from the way this pattern, and it's a little bit here on the sides, but especially underneath here, it looks like, oh boy, I don't know what the politically correct name for Indian corn is, but you know, the colorful corns that we see around harvest time and around Thanksgiving. There's one line of thought that the corn snakes were named for that. The other line of thought is that they're named corn snakes because they eat the rodents that feed on the corn. So just the way we name milk snakes, because they were found to live in dairy barns. They weren't actually drinking milk, but they were feeding on the rodents that were eating the grain that were there, that was there for the cows. So anyway, it was really great to see that Sweetie's back. I gotta tell you, she is probably the chunkiest corn snake I've ever seen. And we've got some chunkers too. We've got another snake named Stumpy, who's got quite a bit of girth to her. She is a female, and this is a trait we often see with corn snakes. The males will be just a rangier, lankier sort of a build, and the females tend to put on some weight. I thought I had a picture, but I guess I didn't get quite the right angle. Corn snakes will get what are called corn snake hips if they have a little too much that they're carrying around, and the weight builds up right around where their cloaca is, and what would be where their hips would be were they to have back legs. But it was just really tickled to see that Sweetie's back. If you're in the area and you want to stop by and see a really cool corn snake, you know, I was doing a little corn snake research not too long ago, and there's the other snakes that we have. We have one that has red eyes. She's not all white. She's not a true albino, but she's corn snakes have been bred probably more than any other species of snake to create all these different varieties of colors. They're one of the most popular snakes sold in the pet trade. But it was just nice that Sweetie, we'd actually traded her out to a different agency. She was gone for about a year, and she supposedly, you know, tried to bite somebody, so the other agency decided they didn't want her anymore. So she's come back to us. Her name is Sweetie. I can't imagine a situation where she would want to bite. But having a snake like this, we you know, we do have a corn snake relative that lives in this area. It's the fox snake. Those are the same genus of snakes, Pantherophis. But the Illinois is not known to have any populations of native corn snakes. We do, though, we find corn snakes in the wild from time to time. But it's just, the fox snake pattern is somewhat similar. The build of the fox snake is similar to that of the corn snake. So even though we don't have a native species, which is good, that means the native fox snakes are where they should be, which is out in the wild. But now we've got a snake with a color that kind of approximates. It's a little more colorful than what you'd see on a fox snake, but it's similar. We can interpret with what we've got here. Oh, but what I started to say, so there's I think 800 different color varieties of corn snake that are available. There's lavenders. There's one that's called a candy corn. There's, you know, lots and lots of different variations on this theme. But anyway, enough about Sweetie. I was just tickled to see that she's back. Now this this wasn't the photo that you took, but it's similar. This is called a Nande parakeet or a Nande conure, very common bird in the pet trade. And Bob was down in Florida on vacation and took a picture of a Nande parakeet, which I wasn't aware was an escapee down in Florida, but I should have known that the escaped birds, we're seeing different populations in many places throughout the country of pets that have escaped either on purpose, they've been let go, or they get off on their own. And some climates, it's just not possible for them to survive. A few weeks ago, we talked about the monk parakeets. They're also called Quaker parrots that we have here in the Chicago area. They make those big colonial type nests out of grass and sticks. And there's a big group of them that lives over at the ComEd substation in what's that, Glenelg and Lombard, right on the line there on Swift Road. But given our climate up here, we don't have a lot of other exotics like that. But Florida, I wanted to see just what more I could learn about escaped exotics. And this is a graphic from National Audubon. And across the bottom there, you can see the top three, and monk is number one, but look who's number three, the Nande. And again, I had no idea that they were that prevalent in the wild. But oh geez, did I cut it off? I did. I cut off the color key. So dark, oh no, here it is. So number of parrot species reported by county. So the darker colors, that deep purple, it goes from about 1 to maybe 5 or so, and then that color gradually lightens. And that's what we see throughout much of the country. There's 5 or fewer species of exotic parrots in various places throughout the US until you get down to southern Florida. Look at that. I don't know how many times it seems like every time I talk about Florida, I end up calling it poor Florida. They've just had so many impacts to their ecosystems down there, whether it's, amusement parks like Disneyland, or the sugar industry, all the rerouting of water that they've done down there. The Everglades have been highly affected. But look, it's the only place in the country that has what looks to be 36 exotic parrot species. So I thought that was kind of interesting too. I heard something on the news. I don't have a graphic to show it, but maybe you heard this too. There was because it's not just exotic birds that are all over Florida. There's iguanas that were also escaped and released pets. And then of course we always hear about the pythons, the big berms, the Burmese pythons, the reticulated pythons. Those snakes, now some were probably owner releases, but one of the major reasons there's so many exotic snakes in Florida is because of the breeding facilities that existed there that were then hit by various hurricanes. And those breeding facilities, if the roof gets torn off and the cages get torn open, those snakes go off on their own. And they start to breed because it's got that kind of a climate. Well, anyway, what this news item was that there was a study going on where they were radio collaring opossums. And the student that was tracking the movement of the opossums noticed that some of these collars weren't moving in very opossum-like fashion. And what they found was that these giant snakes were eating the opossums, but the radio collar was not destroyed in the process. Snakes don't chew their foods; they swallow things whole. Now, I don't know. Snake stomach juices are pretty strong; those acids are pretty strong. But somehow these collars were able to survive, and it led them. It's a way that now they can find, because a big problem with trying to control those snake populations is just trying to find them. Even though they're big snakes, they camouflage well, and there's a lot of areas of Florida that are, you can't just, go walking through them. They're pretty tangled with brush. So anyway, it was an accidental discovery, but it might prove helpful. You might have to sacrifice some opossums, but maybe they could even, implant radio collars in, some pre-killed prey or something. But I thought that was kind of interesting too. But yeah, that's what's going on down in the Sunshine State. Now, tell you what, I'm going to stop the share here. It looks like we got a couple of items here to share in the chats. We have here. Crazy to think of a time when there are only 16 deer in the I know. Can you imagine that, Greg and Kelly? Yeah, that's right. You got a deer taking naps in your yard. There was some deer tracks again over by Haynes Middle School. I was walking over there to get the Park District van the other day, but yeah, it's a species. When we talk about wildlife, I was actually preparing for a talk I'm doing tomorrow night on wildlife conservation. We're calling them success stories, but sometimes, there's they go beyond success into that upper echelon of numbers. And that's sort of where we're at with deer right now. We have an awful lot of deer in the area. I'll never say we have too many, because you never know what's going to happen. Same with the geese. I'll always stick up for geese as well. They're another species, the giant race of Canada geese that we have here. We through no fault of their own, their populations have taken off. It was actually human intervention that brought them back to this area. If we go back to the 1960s, 1970s, we didn't have them here either. Let's see, is there a pattern for the boxes? And you caught me again. What were we talking about when we were talking about boxes? Let me see if I can refresh my memory here.
The kestrels.
There we go. Thank you. Is that you, Mrs. Tricia? Yeah, I'm not sure. John is a carpenter, and I'm sure there's something. And if you're interested, Ann and Ralph, if you want to try putting some up, I could check into that for you and get you some plans. I will do that. I'll see what there is there. Yeah, I was picturing not nest boxes. Meredith was out looking for skunk cabbage. Del Norwoods this week. Yeah. A place. So Glenwood Park, and then even Glenwood. It's a forest preserve that. It was actually named, gosh, back when the Aurora Elgin trains were running. That was there was a power plant there. They actually used Fox River. They had a dam there, a power dam that would help generate electricity for that line. And that whole area, which is now forest preserve, was kind of a amusement park type of thing. I don't know. I know there was a dance pavilion. There were different sort of amusements that you would have, say, 100 years ago. But before that, that area was developed, I think that was all fen. I think there was a lot of alkaline groundwater that was seeping up, because there's still that skunk cabbage there, as well as at what's the soon to be renamed Lippold Park, which is just south of there. And then at Red Oak Nature Center, there's an area that grows quite a bit of skunk cabbage on what would be the north boundary of Red Oak and the south boundary of Lippold. So, and Gordon talked as though that was a place where the skunk cabbage comes up sooner. than it does up here at the fen. Let's see. Melissa, about 3 years ago, I spotted a buck and 7 does emerging under Fabian overpass on the bike trail. Yeah, you know, I saw something similar to Melissa at Norris Woods. In fact, it was the first time I ever got a deer tick. I was walking on the same path as these deer, and I thought it was really cool how there was just so many deer. And they were just walking one after another. And then I got in the car, I'm like, what's on my neck? Oh, it's a deer tick. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know where I saw it. I don't think it's anything I have in any of my folders here, but someone had taken a picture over at the Timbers, the development there in the just north of downtown St. Charles. And there was, I think, 32 deer clustered in a common area, just grazing. That's a lot of deer in one very small and very suburban location. I used to see kestrels fairly often sitting on telephone wires. Yeah, you know, I always do a double take when I see a single bird on a wire, because there's a chance it might be a kestrel. If it's more than one, it's usually doves, or pigeons or starlings. But yeah, you know, they've lost a lot of habitat, and the cavities that they need, they're just in such short supply now. They do have to contend with the starlings, and that's where the monitoring program is useful. But I kind of wonder if we get more boxes, if that might help them. Turns out nest boxes were the key to the return of barn owls, B-A-R-N, barn, not B-A-R-R-E-D, barred, but barn owls. They were, just 10 years ago, they were still an endangered species here in Illinois, and a reintroduction program was attempted, but it didn't work. The birds didn't stick around, or they didn't survive. But other states like Iowa and I think Missouri, they started putting up nest boxes, and the barn owls came back. So now Illinois started the same thing, and in just a short time span, I want to say it was less than 10 years, they met their benchmark of, I think it was 10,000 barn owls across the state, which is what they the marker that they wanted to hit to declare them no longer endangered, and it worked. So anyway, maybe kestrel boxes will prove the key to helping our smallest falcon survive. We tend to think of kestrels, and we see a bird of prey and you think it's either a hawk or an owl, but kestrels are actually one of 2 falcons that we have around here, the other one being the peregrine. So with that, looks like we're bumping up on 9 o'clock here. That's, nobody has anything else for the group. Let's see. Yep. Well, that's all I got, folks. They may have had anything else they'd care to. Oh, I know what I was going to share. Next week is another week off. It's another Conservation on Tap gathering with the Conservation Foundation down at Two Brothers. If you'd like information on that, drop me a line and I'll send it out to you. But there's no good-natured hour next week. So just as I was about to sign off and say, see you in a week, I'll see you in 2 weeks. Appreciate that. Oh, and thanks, yeah, Meredith. I do need to add the March dates. I'm not able to do that myself. That's something I have to have our marketing manager do. And there are going to be a couple of dates coming up that I won't be available. I need to get those hammered down. But yeah, we'll get before we run out of February. I'll make sure we get March, April, and May loaded into the system. Really appreciate your support and your continued sign up, because I really look forward to this every week. Maybe you guys do too. Anyway, thanks everybody. Have a great rest of your week, and have a great rest of your next week.
Thank
Pam.
you, Pam.
Great.
Thanks a lot.
Hey, everybody.
Pam.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Pam.
Pam.
Thanks, Pam.
Thanks, Pam.
Bye, everybody. Cheers.
Thanks, Pam. Bye.